Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and Wargaming keep wanting to test autocannons inside the game. You are going to be checking out gameplay from the Overwhelming Fire event, which is taking place inside the arcade cabinet. And unlike on the test server that we all got to see a month or two ago, there are a whole stack of new vehicles available. There is an autocannon self-propelled gun, a new autocannon wheeled vehicle, an autocannon Jagdpanzer E100 Stug, and there's also the PTV, which looks very much like the TVP, so forgive me if I call it that a few times in this replay, as well as also the PRUT, or the PRUT, which is a kind of Object 140 with a little flak cannon on top of it. So, autocannons in World of Tanks. As I showed in my last video, they've kind of got three different ways that they work. One is that they fire like bang, 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 like a mouse, or alternatively like this one, they literally are like almost these flak cannons, really fast firing, very similar to the low tier tanks that you have in World of Tanks. However, this is not tier 3 gameplay, this is not a Panzer 1C, and you can see clearly that the magazine doesn't fire in tiny little bursts that you would have on the Panzer 1C, but a much more substantial magazine that we can see it emptying just towards the lower part of the reticle. So the best vehicle inside this game mode all round, I feel, would be the PTV. I feel like it's the one that you can have the most impact in, because it has a big old magazine and a fairly good reload, but more importantly, it's fast enough to be able to kite a flak mouse, as we can see here. I don't think that flak mouse liked that I did 1,500 damage to his turret, and so he's coming right after me. However, now I'm also getting hunted down by a PTV as well, and unfortunately this is just going to be a case of us trading hit points there. I do 1,600 to them and they do 900 to me, so I guess they whiffed a few of their shells. I'm quite happy with that trade. And just look at how quickly your damage stacks up. We're up to 4,000 damage in the first couple of minutes of this battle. Everyone's got basically double hit points to be able to make up for this. You saw the flak mouse had about 5,000 there. And you can see that the PTV, which is based on its TVP brother inside the game. The TVP would usually have like 1,800, but you've got exactly 3,600 hit points in this game mode. So it's really weird because this gun deals 700 damage per second, but then has a very awkward reload. So you don't have to be firing for many seconds to be able to do some substantial damage to your opponents, just like this. Although, as you can see, the Stuggy 100 actually has pretty good armor, so he wouldn't have been able to go through the side there while it was angled. Wargaming have made a real interesting decision with this game mode as well, that the gold rounds on this vehicle are literally doing half of the damage. So I guess they just don't want everybody to just load gold and to spam it. An interesting mechanic like that, lots of people over the years are always asking for people to nerf gold rounds inside World of Tanks. I'm not sure what Wargaming are testing here with the regular rounds and the gold rounds. Honestly, with the weak points that you have inside the vehicles, aka the whole of the flak mouse's turret, the whole of this thing's hull, and getting the side or the rear of the Stuggy 100, no one's really firing gold rounds, and quite rightly so. I have to admit, it does feel really good to just be able to let rip, but also to kind of like let off the trigger and not be able to waste your shells as you would do on something like an M5 Stuart inside the game, where you have to fire all 5 shells after you click once, which is a little bit weird. So, let me also talk about the economy of this game mode, or shall I say the event that you have to do. If you want to get all of the rewards from Overwhelming Fire, you need to win 10 games, but oh, that was pretty much a full mag in there, 1,800 damage dealt to the PTV. Getting 10 wins inside this game mode, I can tell you, is quite the headache. The average player is going to have to play 20 games to be able to achieve that, and the games aren't that short. It's going to take you a couple of hours to get 400 bonds, and while a couple of hours for 400 bonds doesn't seem like the most stupid trade, when you think about what you actually end up spending your bonds on, it doesn't seem like a very good economy. A piece of bond equipment, for example, is like 5,000. Obviously, the flak mouse having some fun with the butt of my tank there. Like, a piece of equipment for 5,000 bonds. The idea that you get 400 for 2 hours of your life. Are you telling me that I meant to, like, dump, like, 24 hours of playing World of Tanks to be able to afford one piece of equipment? I don't think so. So, the game mode better be fun, right? And all in all, I'd say that while there are some novelties like this, the Stug E100 with this kind of like minigun on the front. It's just such a ridiculous tank. The barrel looks like comically short compared to the Jagdpanzer's regular 170mm. So while there are flutters of fun inside this game mode, I'd say all in all, after getting like 10 wins on my free-to-play account, which is the gameplay that you see today, I can tell you participation in this is probably not worth it. I really think Wargaming should have considered to not make winning the objective inside this game mode. While I have no problem trying to win when I'm playing a fun game mode, which definitely feels a little more RNG and a little less strategic than the random queue, I do think that just participation should have been enough. And so Wargaming, if anyone out there is listening, I would thoroughly recommend for future arcade cabinets, why don't you just try and make it so it's like the top 10 players on the team that get a progression token towards completing it. Because honestly, getting 10 wins just hurts the casuals. And also, I saw a lot of players just playing the EBR and just driving in to try and like play as many games as possible and just hope that their team carried them. Alright, so the Stug E100. This has the highest burst of any of the autocannons. Check this out. Yeah, that was 2,000 damage dealt really quickly to those PTVs. And this vehicle also has 4,500 hit points, so it can take a bit of a punishment as well. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do against this PTV here, unless he gets a little bit silly here. And while he's going to do a substantial amount of damage, penetrating most of their shells, I got you now, kid. And unfortunately, 1,800 damage was not enough to be able to finish them off. And it looks like the Stug E100 dealt the final blow. But just like that, 2 mags up to 3,800 damage. Although I have taken a huge amount as well. Definitely not the best trades of my life. However, I don't know what you're doing, artillery. I'll be playing that one next game, by the way, so you can see exactly what an autocannon artillery looks like in World of Tanks. And I can tell you, it's truly spectacular. Alright, so we've got ourselves a bit of an awkward scenario here where we've lost most of our hit points, but luckily we literally have so much burst damage on this vehicle that as long as I can try and be a little bit smart still against my opponents, it shouldn't really matter. As long as I can help this this flak mouse hopefully punch the Stug E100 if he comes around the corner, we should still be okay. We can see the flak mouse puts a good clip into the Stug E100, and oh man, that is crazy damage. That's like the fastest damage in World of Tanks outside of, I guess, the FV215B183 reloading for 20 seconds and then delivering a Hess shell to maybe the side of a vehicle or a lightly armored tank. The damage in the Stug E100 really does add up. And for these kind of like close quarters combat brawls, nothing really compares to this tank, and I found it probably one of the best. Unfortunately, you can't pick the maps that you're going to get on inside this game mode, and you can't change your tank depending on the map that you get on. And so, while this vehicle does do very well for these kind of like brawly situations on Lakeville, it did do incredibly badly when you kind of got on those Malinovkas, where you're just too slow and frankly everyone's going to just outmaneuver you and outspot you. Alright, so the Thunderclap, as we can see here, unable to go through the frontal armor. The actual weak point of this vehicle is the superstructure, and if any of you are going to seriously try hard inside this game mode, go onto Tanks GG and you can actually see the armor models. Luckily for me, I still managed to do 1,200 damage to that player and only take 172 in return, showing you why it's so important to be able to angle the front of this hull. And usually it's about who gets the burst out first and then angles their armor as to who is going to survive. But we're making some pretty good trades now, even though we threw away most of our hit points at the beginning. Now we're up to 9,000 damage, which obviously is definitely inflated. This would be kind of like a 5,000 damage game if it was a regular round of World of Tanks. It's still not bad. You can see how much damage you can still deal even if you just dump all of the rounds out without any kind of waiting for them to be able to get more accurate. And really, that is your best bet in this tank. You shouldn't really pulse the gun at long range. You should just unload it fully and then reload it. You don't really have ammunition problems inside this game mode, as you're carrying 4,000 rounds of ammunition. Alright, TVP, your time has come. Okay, I'm going to go for the weak point on the side of the Thunderclap, as we can see there. And we spread our 2,000 damage amongst 2 targets, weakening them both. Although, unfortunately, if this Thunderclap comes after me, I'm not going to be too well. Luckily for me, the Thunderclap chooses the other Stuggy 100, and he actually runs out of shells. I reverse out the way to make sure I allow the Stuggy 100 on my team to get his revenge, and he manages to do so before he is destroyed by Stug on the enemy team. I guess I could have pushed forwards there and blocked my ally and got the kill for myself, but it just didn't feel right considering that ally kept me alive against the Thunderclap in that scenario. Okay, so it's just me and a flak mouse valiantly holding the town, hoping that our other tanks on our team are actually going to get stuck in. Alright, this looks pretty good, right? So the PTV, we finish him off with a little bit of burst, and we burst another Stuggy 100. And it's just so bizarre to be playing this vehicle where you can like get into that scenario and you get to burst out 2 tanks with a single salvo. Luckily for me, 12,600 damage was enough to be able to take down this game. I can tell you, yeah, this one feels real meaty, and I'd say it's probably one of the most fun vehicles that you can play inside the game mode. But the real tank that I think a lot of you will be either excited to see or just some kind of spectacle will be the Batchat CS59. This is an auto cannon artillery that, to all intents and purposes, I guess, is firing, is that 12 rockets in between 2 bursts at its opponents. Now this vehicle, it definitely hits hard. Each shell 500 damage, but one thing that's really interesting is Wargaming have upped the splash radius once again to 15 meters. So this is kind of like old school artillery here, I guess with new school HE mechanics, but or shall I say new school penetration at only 48. So this splash is going to be oh so much more substantial. It's going to be like playing old artillery where you don't even have to hit your opponent to still at least splash them. But whether or not the amount of penetration the vehicle has is going to lead to meaty amounts of damage remains to be seen. So there we go, 2 EBR-40s, which have spent a long time trying to hunt down all of the Batchats. And there you go, look at that. Look at the fireworks going at their opponents. Oh my word, looks just absolutely ridiculous. I'm wondering if I should fire a salvo. One thing that's interesting about this is, as you can see, it never truly gets fully accurate. You expect it's going to aim in more, but it is actually pretty accurate, so you should still try and aim it the best you can. And you can actually drag the salvo, as we can see here. That was 6 rockets, I guess, that have hit the enemy, or 6 of our shells. And then I guess we're going to fire another one here at the Stug to try and slow them down. And yeah, that's actually quite substantial damage. We did 1,000 with our first 12 that we have fired at our opponents. Oh my god, I mean, the graphics look great. I'm sorry, just seeing all of those shells hitting just looks awesome. And oh, this looks like the dream, right? 2 EBRs and a PTV, all kind of like scurrying around. I'd rather get rid of them now before they can try and find me later on inside this battle. Is that EBR really going to sit there? Alright, release the rockets! So how much did we do there? About 570, and managed to also do a bit of critting there. Are you two gonna hug just for me? That's nice. Oh, boys. So we didn't actually quite see all of those, but it looks like each one did about 500. I have to admit, maybe it's like a dirty pleasure, but playing this thing inside the overwhelming fire game mode has been by far the most fun you can have inside it. So much so that when I was playing on Friday, the queue times for the Batchat were kind of like probably about 2 minutes. I think there are about 200 players at any one time in the queue waiting for a game. And Wargaming has limited the amount of Batchats that can play to 2 per 12 players, which makes sense. Or should I say 2 per side? And do you see that? That's a blind fire salvo on the EBR-40, and I was laughing my butt off there. The rockets do genuinely go all over the place, but when you're splashing for 15 meters, each one just seems to add up. And add up indeed, excluding the blind damage, which has to probably be about 500 by now. We're up to 2,500 damage so far. I have to admit, with having artillery that is this mobile, it kind of feels a bit like the artillery of old. I don't care what anyone says. Artillery is definitely more fun and actually worth playing when it can be played like this. I guess the issue is whether artillery is being toxic to everyone else when it is in this kind of shape or form. And I can tell you, it definitely felt like it was inside the overwhelming fire game mode. But not because it's arguably unbalanced, but because Wargaming didn't really give you very good repair times. And so the most frustrating thing about this is that you get one repair kit, which does have a 60-second cooldown, sure, but it just feels as if you get caught by two of these, and one of them tracks you with their first salvo, and then the other one hits you and retracts you again, then you've got two salvos to avoid, and you're pretty much doomed unless you're playing a heavily armored vehicle. But one thing I'd like to show you is what happens when one Batchat CS59 engages another Batchat CS59. Well, as you're going to see, he fires his rockets at me, I fire my rockets at him, and let's just say there's only one outcome in this, and that is an eye for an eye. And this was definitely one of my favorite moments from the whole of this event so far. It just shows how ridiculous all of this is. And I guess that this comes to the point where I have to now try and figure out what Wargaming are actually planning with this. Because I don't think this is just a fun game mode, all right? If it was a fun game mode, a truly fun game mode, it would have gone in as some kind of like Mars event or some kind of like a Murney event, something like that. I truly think that this is Wargaming playing around with development. And while I don't think that they're going to put autocannon self-propelled guns in the game, I think that all of the data that they're gathering with us playing the Overwhelming Fire event will hopefully have a purpose inside their development. They've put in, should we say, one of every type of tank, a heavily armored, brawling TD with an incredible burst potential, the mouse, the little pop, 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 pop kind of gun, the Hailstorm, which is an aggressive light tank that needs to get into close quarters combat and be able to dump out the full mag, and even things like the PTV, which is kind of as if you're taking a Panzer 1C and put it up at tier 10. These tanks are ridiculous in a way, but not so ridiculous that Wargaming might not be planning some of their mechanics, at least on possibly a premium tank anytime soon. And so now it gets to the stage of how does Wargaming actually balance them or make them different enough from other vehicles? Is it just cool enough to be able to have an autocannon when it pretty much does kind of the same amount of damage as if you had unloaded a magazine? Think about the TVP T50/51. That vehicle can do 1,280 in 4.5 seconds of the first shot. That's not all that different to what you've been seeing so far in the video today. Sure, all of the hit points have been scaled up. As we saw, the Batchat CS59 had 1,000, the Flak Mouse had 5,000. But just because the numbers are bigger doesn't mean that it's actually kind of changing the balance of things. And from that argument, does it really matter how you do the damage? If it's just burst fire or if it's going to be larger caliber shells? If the magazine size is the same and if the reload is the same, then if the damage permitted is overall in the same, what does it even really matter from a balancing perspective? The big thing will be is that these flak guns will be better in close quarters combat because they can deliver all of their shells against weakly armored targets or the side or the rear, but they're going to be much, much worse at long range where that kind of bloom prevents them from being effective. The interesting thing for me is that Wargaming have only put a heat bar or kind of like the overheat mechanic on one of the vehicles that are available out of the, I think, 8 for the Overwhelming Fire. And that is the Thunderclap. And they've done that because they wanted to experiment with having a massive magazine that you can't unload all in one go. And for me personally, I think that is by far the most interesting of the mechanics that I would really like Wargaming to build upon. Because honestly, all of these other vehicles, they don't really feel too different to what we already have. Which brings me kind of like full circle back to my point for the conclusion of the video. And that is that sure, you can make bigger explosions and you can just make a tank fire more shells for a smaller amount. And while I'm sure kind of like the shock and awe will make the vehicle kind of like exciting initially, unless it has a new mechanic or does something explicitly different to what we already have, just really wouldn't want to see wasted development. Because boy, do these tanks feel cool. They seem to work flawlessly, at least within the Overwhelming Fire game mode. And I hope Wargaming strive that if they do put these vehicles into the random queue, that it isn't just big flashy guns that don't do anything new. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments what you think about an autocannon self-propelled gun. Does this look awesome? Or do you think this is the kind of thing that you would probably quit the game over if it was added to the random queue? And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for the World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase live right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, I'm going to be playing up towards the Bat Chatillon, the original autoloader inside World of Tanks, along with the AMX 50B back in 2011. And this is still one of the best assassins in the game. So let's see if we can get sneaky and hound down a few of our opponents. So really looking forward to seeing you all live right now. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.